The moment my son informed me that my presence would not be desired at his home during the Christmas holiday, I maintained my composure, walked out to my vehicle, and placed a single phone call. Within weeks, their monthly house payments had been terminated, and that was merely the first step in what I had planned. Sometimes, dignity must be restored, and hubris must face consequences. What happened next will astound you. Before we proceed, please make sure to subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from today. I mentioned that perhaps I could prepare my signature roast turkey this season, sinking comfortably into the expensive leather sofa belonging to Michael. The recipe with sage dressing that your late mother absolutely adored, I continued. Do you recall how she always insisted it surpassed even her own grandmother's version? Those words lingered in the cozy atmosphere of the room, blending with the fragrance of Isabella's costly vanilla-scented candles. Michael fidgeted beside me, his gold wedding band glinting beneath the glow of their enormous 12-foot Christmas tree. Something shifted in his demeanor as his shoulders drew inward, almost as though preparing for something unpleasant. Father, regrettably, your attendance will not be possible this Christmas, he stated. The statement struck me with unexpected force, and I found myself blinking in disbelief. Surely I had misunderstood him. Could you explain what you mean by that? Why would I not be able to come? Michael avoided looking directly at me, his attention fixed on the elegant marble table between us, the very same one I had assisted him in selecting the previous spring, after Isabella had decided their existing furniture lacked sufficient refinement. Isabella's mother and father will be visiting, and they have expressed a preference that you not be present. A chill spread through my hands instantly. They have expressed a preference, he repeated. The situation is simply less complicated this way, Father. You understand how our family approaches their holiday customs. They maintain particular standards for how things should be done. His voice diminished with every word he spoke, as if he were physically diminishing before my eyes. My gaze traveled across the elegant living space, taking in the silk window treatments I had financed when Isabella complained about lacking privacy, the beautiful hardwood flooring that had required me to take out a second loan against my property, the ornate crown molding that had pushed my credit cards to their limits. Every corner of this residence bore evidence of my contributions, my personal sacrifice, my devotion to my son. Their particular standards, I echoed slowly. And precisely what standards would those be, Michael? He winced visibly. Father, please do not make this situation more difficult than necessary. Through the archway leading to the kitchen, my eyes fell upon Isabella's brand new professional-grade stand mixer, the top-of-the-line model she had claimed was essential for her brief enthusiasm for holiday baking that persisted for roughly 3 weeks. $2,000 of my hard-earned money sitting there, likely operated no more than twice since the autumn months. So where exactly am I supposed to celebrate Christmas? The question emerged more softly than I had intended. Michael's expression fell apart. Perhaps you might consider visiting your Aunt Rosa, or alternatively, we could arrange something for the following weekend. The following weekend, as though the most important holiday of the year were simply another scheduling matter that could be shifted around for convenience. I rose from my seat, my knees objecting after 8 long years of shouldering this weight by myself. I understand now, I said. Father, please wait, he called out. But my feet were already carrying me toward the exit, moving past the arranged family photographs where my image grew progressively smaller and more peripheral in each successive frame, past the hallway closet overflowing with Isabella's extensive jacket collection. My fingers found the door handle, solid and frigid against my skin. Son, I spoke without looking back, please convey my holiday greetings to Isabella's parents. Feliz Navidad. The brisk December atmosphere struck my face sharply as I made my way to my pickup truck. Behind me, I detected Michael calling out my name a single time before the gentle sound of the door closing reached my ears. Definitive and absolute. I remained seated behind the steering wheel momentarily with the engine silent, observing the festive lights twinkling in windows of homes where I would never find welcome. My mobile device vibrated, most likely Michael attempting to reconcile matters with hollow assurances and expressions of remorse. I chose not to respond. Instead, I started the ignition and drove off into the gathering darkness, leaving behind the inviting warmth of the residence I had helped purchase, but would never truly belong to. The heating system hummed steadily against the winter chill as I navigated the well-known streets heading toward my own home. South hills extended in every direction around me, Each neighborhood intersection holding recollections of the person I had once been. Someone who held the conviction that family represented everything, who would surrender his final dollar to witness his son's happiness. That individual had been naively foolish. I came to a stop at the traffic signal on 29th and Grand, watching a young father loading wrapped presents into his sport utility vehicle, while his children pressed their eager faces against the window glass, their breath creating fog circles filled with anticipation. There had been a time when Michael and I shared exactly that kind of bond, before Isabella entered our lives, before I was reduced to nothing more than a mobile cash machine, burdened with inconvenient feelings. The financial figures began cycling through my consciousness like a malfunctioning gambling machine. $2,800 every single month, spanning 5 complete years. My adding machine had essentially surrendered attempting to process the total when I had finally computed everything the previous spring. $140,000, a sum exceeding what Maria and I had accumulated for our entire retirement together, vanished completely into nothing. I accelerated more forcefully than warranted as the signal changed to green, and the truck responded with a growl matching my disposition. 5th Street appeared before me, the location where I had refinanced my residence, the home Maria and I had built together in order to provide their initial payment. The lending officer had regarded me with sympathy I had failed to recognize at the time. "Mr. Flores, are you absolutely certain about this decision? You are placing considerable assets at risk for another person's property investment." Another person's property investment, he had called it. Not my son's bright future, not my family's financial security. Another person's property investment. Lincoln Street came next, where the financial institution stood that had provided me with an additional mortgage when Michael found himself unemployed 2 years prior. "Just temporarily, father, just until I can establish myself again." Isabella had positioned herself behind him during that conversation, her $700 handbag draped over her shoulder, nodding with apparent understanding while mentally calculating the worth of my desperate situation. As events unfolded, my desperation held absolutely no value to them whatsoever. I guided my vehicle into my own driveway, the one featuring cracked pavement I could not afford to repair, because every available dollar had been absorbed into their flawless suburban illusion. The light fixture on my porch flickered intermittently, yet another maintenance issue I had been postponing. Inside my dwelling, the atmosphere felt vacant without Maria's warm laughter, without the comfort of family gatherings that would apparently never occur again. My telephone rang as I struggled with my house keys, the sharp tone reverberating off the bare walls. Isabella's name illuminated the display, probably intending to justify why I was insufficiently refined for her parents' delicate preferences. The timing could not have been more fitting. I had been anticipating this discussion for 5 long years. I accepted the call on the 4th ring, allowing her to experience uncertainty about whether I would answer at all. "Dennis," Isabella's voice oozed with artificial warmth, the identical tone she employed whenever requesting that I cover their water utility or property tax bills. "I have been informed about this small misunderstanding with Michael." "A misunderstanding," I responded, positioning myself against my kitchen counter while still wearing my coat. "I believe no misunderstanding exists here, Isabella. Your position was communicated with perfect clarity." "Listen carefully. I recognize this may appear severe, but you must appreciate my parents' viewpoint. They are extremely traditional individuals who anticipate a specific ambience during holiday celebrations." "A specific ambience," I repeated back. "What ambience would that be exactly?" A moment of silence followed, during which I could detect shopping bags being shuffled in the background, likely expenditures that should have been allocated toward their house payment, obligations that had somehow become my burden to bear. "Well, they are unaccustomed to your style of cuisine. All those heavily seasoned Mexican dishes and boisterous celebrations. And to speak frankly, Dennis, they are highly educated people who expect discussions about contemporary affairs, literary works, artistic subjects, you understand." Her words landed with more impact than any physical strike could have delivered. 8 years of restraining my responses, of absorbing insults for the sake of Michael's happiness, of acting as though I failed to observe how she regarded me as though I were merely domestic staff. My style of cuisine, I maintained an even, controlled tone. "You are referring to the meals you consumed every Sunday for 3 consecutive years during our financially challenging period. The handmade tamales you claimed evoked memories of your own grandmother? That represented different circumstances, We felt gratitude during that time. But currently with my parents present. Currently with your parents present, you cannot have the Mexican laborer causing you embarrassment at your sophisticated dinner table. I finished for her. The artificial pleasantness vanished from her voice. Please refrain from being theatrical, Dennis. This matter has nothing to do with ethnicity. This concerns social standing. My father completed his degree with highest honors from Washington State. My mother is fluent in 4 different languages. They vacation in the Hamptons during summer months. What contribution could you possibly make to dinner conversation? Anecdotes about installing floor tiles. Warmth flooded through my chest, yet I maintained steady composure. I constructed a successful enterprise from absolutely nothing following your husband's grandfather's passing. I have provided employment for more than 50 individuals. My tax contributions exceed what your father earned during his most profitable year. Monetary success is not the sole measure, Dennis. Proper upbringing matters significantly. Educational attainment matters. And speaking honestly, Maria possessed a better understanding of appropriate boundaries than you apparently do. Complete silence overtook the connection. She had transgressed a boundary I had not even realized existed until she had stomped across it wearing her expensive designer shoes. What exactly did you just say regarding my wife? I am simply observing that she demonstrated greater skill at assimilating. She avoided creating disruptions. She comprehended that certain environments were not intended for someone of her background. My grip on the telephone intensified until my knuckles turned pale. Maria possessed more genuine refinement in her smallest finger than your entire ancestral line will ever accumulate. Oh, spare me the dramatics. She was a domestic worker who happened upon good fortune. At minimum, she possessed the wisdom to remain silent about her origins. Isabella, I pronounced, my voice dropping to something unrecognizable even to myself. I require you to pay extremely close attention. This discussion has concluded. Our pretense of being family has ended. You have no authority to simply. We are finished. I stated again before disconnecting the call. I placed my telephone down deliberately on the counter surface, my hands maintaining surprising steadiness. Surrounding me, the kitchen seemed transformed somehow, more confined yet simultaneously purified, as though an oppressive burden had been elevated from the very atmosphere itself. I proceeded to my small desk situated in the corner, and retrieved the manila folder I had been evading for several months. Financial institution records, property loan documentation, 5 years of automated transfers that had slowly depleted my resources while they existed like aristocracy. The time had arrived to cease this hemorrhaging of my finances. The documentation spread across my kitchen surface resembled evidence displayed at a legal proceeding. 5 years of financial records, each one displaying the identical automated withdrawal. $2,800 departing on the 15th of every month, disappearing from my account into theirs. A documentary trail of my own foolishness. I retrieved my calculator and commenced the addition. The initial year totaled $33,600. The subsequent year, an additional $33,600. By the 3rd year, I had ceased purchasing new clothing for myself. During the 4th year, I had begun shopping exclusively at discount food markets. This current 5th year, I had resorted to consuming peanut butter sandwiches for midday meals simply to manage financially. $143,400, and that excluded the initial down payment, excluded the occasions when I had covered their utility expenses whenever Isabella's compulsive shopping became excessive, excluded the replacement roof, the landscaping work, the furnishings that were supposedly indispensable for their way of living. I settled back into my chair, studying the figures until they became indistinct. The proceeds from Maria's life insurance, my retirement funds, the educational savings we had established for future grandchildren, I would apparently never be permitted to know. Everything had disappeared, poured into a residence where my presence was unwelcome for a Christmas meal. I reached for my telephone and scrolled through my saved contacts until locating the number from my financial institution. The automated system presented options in both English and Spanish. How considerate, how welcoming to individuals such as myself. Customer Service Department. This is Jennifer speaking. How may I assist you today? I need to terminate an automatic payment transfer, I stated, my voice more stable than it had been in years. Certainly, sir. I will need your account identification number, along with some verification details. I recited the numbers while listening to her typing in the background. Professional, competent, offering no judgment regarding why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments that were presumably directed toward his son's mortgage obligation. I have located the transfer you mentioned, Mr. Flores. $2,800 monthly directed to Wells Fargo, account concluding with 7423. How long has this transfer been active? 5 years, I replied, the words carrying a bitter taste. And you wish to cancel it with immediate effect? I surveyed my kitchen, noting the outdated appliances I lacked funds to update, observing the walls requiring fresh paint, examining the windows that permitted cold drafts because I had devoted my home improvement budget to maintaining someone else's palace. With immediate effect, I confirmed. Completed. The transfer has been canceled. Is there any additional assistance I can provide today? No, I responded, finding myself surprised at how satisfying that single word felt. No, that covers everything. I ended the call and sat amid the sudden stillness of my home. Beyond the windows, December darkness was descending upon Spokane, holiday lights glittering in windows of households where families congregated without preconditions, without criticism, without any necessity to conceal their true identities. For the first time across 5 years, the following month's budget would achieve balance. For the first time since Maria's passing, I could afford to repair my porch lighting, purchase quality groceries, perhaps even consider taking a trip somewhere. I collected the bank statements and mortgage documentation, all the proof of my sacrificial giving. Then I walked toward my fireplace, ignited a match, and observed 5 years of martyrdom transform into cinders. The flames felt warm against my face, more comforting than I had experienced in years. My telephone vibrated with an incoming message, probably Michael seeking to express regret, or Isabella requiring funds for something supposedly critical like decorative cushions. I did not bother checking. Instead, I poured myself a measure of the premium whiskey, the bottle I had been preserving for a significant occasion that never seemed to materialize. This evening felt sufficiently significant. I raised my glass toward the empty room, toward Maria's photograph resting on the mantel, toward the man I had previously been, and the man I was in the process of becoming. Happy Christmas to myself, I declared, and genuinely meant every word. The following morning arrived crisp and luminous, December sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows as I savored my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I was not anxiously calculating how much currency would vanish from my account within 3 days. This newfound liberty tasted more delightful than the Colombian roast I had finally permitted myself to purchase. My telephone rang at precisely 10:47 in the morning with Isabella's name flashing on the display like a cautionary indicator. Dennis, her voice carried that recognizable undertone of inadequately concealed irritation. I need you to collect my parents from Spokane's airport. Their flight from Portland touches down at 2 o'clock. I carefully set down my beverage, observing the vapor spiraling toward the ceiling. Isabella, have you forgotten about our exchange from yesterday? Look, whatever that situation involved, we must concentrate on immediate practical concerns now. My parents require transportation, and you are the only person with available daytime hours. The presumption was truly remarkable. Less than 24 hours following her declaration that I was undeserving of sharing their Christmas dinner, she anticipated I would serve as their personal driver. And you are making this request of me because... Because that is what relatives do, Dennis. They assist one another. Her voice sharpened with annoyance. Besides, let us be realistic here. You are not my adversary. You lack the strength to be my adversary, so simply get in your truck and retrieve them. There it was at last, the ultimate indignity wrapped within a directive. Which airline carrier? I inquired quietly. Alaska Airlines, Flight 447. They will be waiting at baggage collection, carousel number 3. And Dennis, they anticipate someone capable of properly managing their luggage. Do not cause us embarrassment. I could detect her fingernails tapping against some hard surface, probably her granite kitchen counter, the one I had funded when she determined that laminate was unsuitable for her social entertaining. Of course, I replied. I will handle everything appropriately. Good. And dress presentably. Perhaps that blue shirt you wore to Michael's graduation ceremony. They observe such details. The connection terminated without her offering any expression of gratitude. I settled back in my seat, contemplating my telephone's darkened screen. 2 o'clock, Flight 447, baggage claim area, carousel 3. I glanced at the timepiece mounted above my sink, showing 10:52 in the morning. Abundant time remained. I poured myself another serving of coffee, added an extra measure of sugar, and opened the previous day's newspaper to the crossword puzzle I had left incomplete. 7 across required a 12-letter word meaning delayed gratification. The solution would eventually present itself. At 2:15 that afternoon, I was comfortably settled in my preferred armchair with a freshly brewed cup of Earl Grey tea and the Sunday edition of the Spokane Review. The crossword from the previous day lay finished on my coffee table. Delayed gratification had been postponement. My telephone buzzed against the wooden surface with Isabella's name appearing once more. I permitted it to ring unanswered. December sunshine slanted through my living room windows, warming the space where I had passed so many solitary evenings tallying the expense of my generosity. Today the quietude felt transformed, something earned and purposeful. At 2:47, my telephone buzzed again with a preview of her text message visible. "Father, where are you? My parents are waiting." I flipped the device face downward and resumed reading the sports section. The Seahawks had suffered another defeat. Certain things remained perpetually unchanged. By 3:30 my telephone had vibrated 6 separate times. I had completed reading the newspaper, prepared a second pot of tea, and begun organizing the cluttered drawer in my kitchen table. Remarkable what could be accomplished when one was not rushing about serving individuals who regarded you as their personal servant. The 7th call arrived at 3:45. Rather than Isabella's name, an unfamiliar number appeared on the display, probably her parents borrowing someone's device at the airport terminal. I allowed that call to ring unanswered as well. Outside my window, a neighbor was suspending festive lights along his porch, while his children raced about the yard with that particular frantic energy only December afternoons could generate. Ordinary families engaged in ordinary activities. Nobody was stranded anywhere, waiting for assistance that would never materialize. By 4:15, my telephone commenced ringing and would not cease. Isabella calling, then the unfamiliar number, then Isabella once more. The buzzing became unrelenting, resembling an infuriated insect trapped against windowpane glass. I walked to my kitchen and disconnected my landline telephone from its wall outlet. Subsequently, I powered my cellular device completely off. Absolute silence descended. I prepared a grilled cheese sandwich and warmed a can of tomato soup, comfort dishes I had denied myself for months because every grocery expenditure had been allocated toward managing expenses while subsidizing their existence. The cheese melted to perfect golden perfection. The soup steamed invitingly in my favorite ceramic mug. Beyond my windows, the winter sun was already beginning its descent, projecting elongated shadows across my backyard lawn. Somewhere across the city, 3 individuals were presumably standing in an airport parking structure, debating taxi fares while wondering how their personal servant had possessed the audacity to leave them abandoned. The contemplation made my soup taste even more satisfying. By 5 o'clock, I had finished my evening meal, loaded my dishwashing machine, and was deliberating which film to view. Years had passed since I had enjoyed an entire evening to myself without anxiety about emergency requests for money or last-moment favors. I was extending my hand toward the remote control when someone commenced hammering on my front entrance. Not merely knocking, but pounding with the sort of aggressive impact that rattled the door frame and announced pure rage. I placed my tea aside and walked deliberately toward the commotion, already knowing precisely who awaited on the opposite side. The hammering intensified as I approached the entrance, each blow more forceful than the previous. Through the small viewing lens, I observed 3 figures crowded upon my modest porch like predators encircling their prey. I opened the door to discover Cody Jenkins's crimson face positioned mere inches from my own. "What is the matter with you?" he bellowed, forcing his way past me into my living area without any invitation. We waited at that damned airport terminal for over 3 hours. Catherine followed closely behind, her typically immaculate hair now disheveled, her lips compressed into a narrow expression of undisguised contempt. "This represents completely unacceptable conduct from someone your age, Dennis. Absolutely uncivilized behavior." Isabella completed the procession, her designer overcoat wrinkled and her cosmetics smeared. "You humiliated all of us. Do you possess any comprehension of what you have done? My parents were forced to hire a $40 taxi because you chose to. Vacate my residence." My voice sliced through their chorus of outrage like a sharp instrument through fabric. They halted mid-complaint, visibly startled by the firmness in my tone. "Pardon me? Cody's complexion transitioned from crimson to deep purple. You have no standing to issue demands here, old man. Not following what you perpetrated today. This happens to be my home, I stated quietly without relocating from my position beside the entrance. And I want all of you to leave immediately. Catherine advanced forward with her voice saturated with the particular condescension she had refined across decades of regarding individuals like myself with disdain. Dennis, you evidently fail to grasp the enormity of your error. My husband maintains connections throughout this entire city. Professional connections, social connections. You cannot treat individuals of our standing in this manner and expect. This experience was intended as instruction for you, I interjected, meeting her gaze without wavering. A lesson regarding your excessive self-importance and your deplorable treatment of people you consider inferior. Isabella's jaw dropped open. Instruction? Who do you believe yourself to be? Teaching anyone anything. You are insignificant. I am someone who has finally ceased serving as your personal financial source and transportation service. I stepped to the side and held the door open more widely. Class has concluded. You may now exit. Cody thrust a finger toward my chest, though lacking the courage to actually make contact. You have absolutely no idea who you are antagonizing, old man. I have resided in this community longer than you have been drawing its air into your lungs. I know influential people, tremendously important people. People capable of making your existence extremely unpleasant. Is that meant as a threat, Mr. Jenkins? Consider it a guarantee, he replied with his voice descending to a threatening murmur. You imagine that abandoning elderly people at an airport facility is something you can simply do without repercussions. You are about to discover precisely how mistaken you are. Catherine nodded with her smile keen enough to draw blood. Indeed, conduct produces consequences, Dennis, and yours will become quite widely known. Isabella seized her father's arm. Daddy, let us simply depart. This pathetic elderly man is not worthy of our attention. They filed out of my residence like a vanquished army, though Cody pivoted back at the threshold. You will come to regret this action, he declared. I provide you my personal assurance of that. I secured the door behind them and engaged the deadbolt with a gratifying sound. Through the window glass, I observed them cramming themselves into their rental vehicle, still quarreling amongst themselves as they drove away into the December evening. My home felt purified following their departure, as though their presence had deposited a stain now finally dissolving. However, their parting declarations resonated through the sudden stillness. Public repercussions, influential connections, important individuals. I returned to my living area and retrieved my tea, still warm within its cup. For the first occasion throughout this entire situation, I experienced something resembling apprehension. Yet it was overwhelmed by something considerably more powerful. Eager anticipation. 3 days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee while scanning the Spokane Review when I encountered my own countenance staring back from the third page. The headline proclaimed, Spokane business owner abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday weather event. My hands became motionless around the coffee mug. There I appeared in black and white reproduction, an outdated photograph from my company's website, probably 5 years obsolete. Beneath it spread a narrative that simultaneously chilled my blood and ignited my anger. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter for the Christmas holiday, were left stranded at Spokane International Airport for more than 4 hours Sunday, when family member Dennis Flores failed to appear for a previously arranged pickup. The couple, both in their late 50s, waited in frigid temperatures as a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Winter storm warning. The actual conditions have been 52 degrees and cloudless. We could not believe someone would simply abandon us in that manner, stated Cody Jenkins, a retired banking executive. We attempted calling repeatedly, but Mr. Flores never responded to his telephone. We were compelled to hire an expensive taxi service amid dangerous weather conditions. At our age, this sort of treatment is not merely thoughtless, but actually hazardous. The article continued with quotations concerning my supposedly erratic behavioral patterns and expressions of concern regarding my mental stability. Cody had portrayed himself and Catherine as defenseless victims of a cruel elderly man who had suddenly lost his reason without any provocation. No reference to the Christmas dinner exclusion. No context regarding Isabella's demands or their years of monetary exploitation. Simply me, cast as the antagonist who abandoned poor elderly travelers during a blizzard, existing solely within Cody's imagination. I set down my coffee and examined the article again, deliberately, then a third time. The byline belonged to Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. The name was unfamiliar to me, but I recognized the underlying strategy. Cody had called in obligations and utilized his financial sector connections to ensure this story received placement precisely where it would inflict maximum harm upon my reputation. Clever, exceptionally clever. For the first occasion since this entire situation commenced, I experienced reluctant admiration for my opponents. They were not merely privileged trust fund recipients throwing childish fits. They demonstrated strategic thinking and calculation. They understood that within a modest city such as Spokane, one's reputation represented everything. A single strategically positioned newspaper article could demolish decades of diligent effort. They had initiated total warfare. I folded the newspaper with care and placed it to the side as my mind shifted into the systematic planning mode that had constructed my enterprise from nothing. This matter had transcended airport collections. This extended beyond Christmas dinners or house payments. This concerned emerging victorious. I retrieved my laptop computer and began entering names into search engines. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores, their social media accounts, their associations, their patterns, their vulnerabilities, everything they had carelessly made publicly accessible over the years. If they desired to engage in chess, I would demonstrate what an authentic strategist could accomplish. I glanced at my wall calendar, noting December 18th was marked in red, not because it represented Christmas, but because it constituted the ideal day for righteous retribution. According to Isabella's Facebook event postings, they had scheduled Christmas dinner for 12 attendees including family members, acquaintances, neighbors, and members of their social circle, precisely the sort of individuals who read the Spokane Review and formed judgments based upon its contents. Precisely the sort of individuals who deserved to learn the truth. I closed my laptop and proceeded to my kitchen where I had left my quality camera, the one I had purchased years earlier to document construction sites for my business. The time had come to employ it documenting something entirely different. The following day would be Christmas Eve. The following day, Cody Jenkins and his entire family would discover what occurred when you declared conflict against someone who genuinely understood how to wage it. Christmas Eve morning dawned overcast and chilly, precisely the sort of Spokane winter day that made a person thankful for heated homes and family celebrations. Unfortunately, I would not be welcome at either. Nevertheless, I had formulated alternative arrangements. I arranged my evidence like an attorney preparing for court proceedings. Financial institution statements, organized chronologically by year, each monthly transfer highlighted with yellow marker. Receipts arranged in temporal sequence, demonstrating the pattern of my support for their lifestyle. Photographs printed from their social media accounts showing Isabella's new jewelry pieces, their vacation imagery, the costly Christmas decorations currently adorning the residence I had assisted them in maintaining. All reproduced 12 times, one set for each dinner attendee. The newspaper article was positioned atop each assembled stack, with my red ink annotations visible in the margins. The word fabrication written beside Cody's quotations about dangerous weather conditions, false inscribed adjacent to assertions regarding my erratic conduct, missing context, highlighted where they had neglected to mention 5 years of financial assistance. I dressed with particular attention in my finest suit, the navy blue ensemble I had worn to Maria's funeral service, pressed and prepared for another variety of farewell. Today I was bidding farewell to the man who had permitted his family to treat him like a doormat. This evening, I would transform into someone who commanded proper respect. At 6:30 in the evening, I loaded my briefcase with the evidence packets and drove toward Kendall Yards. Their residence glowed with inviting illumination as vehicles filled the driveway and lined the adjacent street. Through the front windows, I could observe figures moving about the dining area, with Isabella performing her hostess role within the home my resources had helped them acquire. I positioned my vehicle across the street and consulted my wristwatch. 6:45, ideal timing, late enough that everyone would be seated for the meal, early enough that they would still be occupied with the main course, providing no convenient escape for anyone. The front entrance remained unlocked, precisely as anticipated. Isabella relished demonstrating how secure their neighborhood was, and how they need not concern themselves with security measures like residents of less affluent areas. I admitted myself quietly as warm air met my face, accompanied by sounds of merriment and conversation emanating from the dining room.
And then Catherine declared, "But darling, that simply is not how we conduct ourselves in our family."
Someone was saying, followed by additional laughter. Our family, after everything they had done to exclude me from it. I proceeded into the dining room carrying my briefcase as 12 faces rotated toward me with expressions spanning from astonishment to horror. Isabella became immobile, with her wine glass suspended halfway toward her lips. Michael's complexion turned ashen. Cody and Catherine appeared as though they had witnessed an apparition. "Good evening to everyone," I pronounced calmly while positioning my briefcase upon their marble sideboard. "I trust you do not object to my joining your Christmas festivities." Isabella regained her voice first. "Dennis, this intrusion is entirely unacceptable. You must depart immediately." "Actually," I responded while opening my briefcase and extracting the first stack of documentation, "I believe your guests deserve to understand who truly financed this dinner, this residence, and the lifestyle you have been exhibiting so proudly." A woman unfamiliar to me, presumably one of Catherine's philanthropic acquaintances, leaned forward with evident curiosity. "What exactly is he discussing, Isabella?" "He is experiencing some manner of episode," Isabella stated hurriedly. "Michael, summon assistance." But I was already circulating around the table, depositing a packet of documents before each guest. "Here you will find the financial records," I explained, conversational. 5 years of monetary support totaling $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, not including the initial down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances, essentially everything you observe surrounding you. The room fell silent, except for the rustling of pages as 12 individuals began examining the evidence. I observed their expressions transform as they absorbed the figures, the dates, the irrefutable proof of my generosity and their deception. "This is," one gentleman began before stopping and staring at a bank statement. "Outrageous," completed the woman seated opposite him. "Isabella, why did you never disclose any of this information?" Isabella's carefully maintained composure was fracturing. "The situation is more complex than these documents suggest. Dennis volunteered to assist us. We never solicited his help." "Actually," I interrupted while producing the newspaper article, "let us discuss what you did solicit and what you communicated to the media concerning me." The atmosphere in the room seemed to decrease by several degrees. I distributed copies of the newspaper article across the table, observing as the dinner guests recognized my photograph from the unflattering story that had appeared 3 days prior. "Now," I declared with my voice projecting clearly through the abrupt stillness, "let us discuss the actual manipulators within this family." Cody's countenance had shifted from crimson to pallid gray. Catherine remained rigid in her seat with her wine glass forgotten in her grasp. "Mr. Jenkins here exploited his banking connections to arrange this story's placement," I continued while tapping the newspaper. "Observe how I am depicted as unstable and dangerous, supposedly abandoning helpless elderly people in freezing conditions." A silver-haired gentleman in an expensive knit sweater looked up from the article. "Cody, what is the meaning of this?" The actual temperature was 52 degrees and sunny, I stated before Cody could formulate a response. And they were not stranded tourists. They were Isabella's parents, arriving for the Christmas dinner from which I had been barred attendance because I was deemed insufficiently worthy for their company. Catherine eventually found her voice. "That is not accurate. We never said." "You never said what precisely, Catherine?" I retrieved my telephone where I had captured screenshots of several of Isabella's social media posts. "That I was too lower class for your parents' company, that my Mexican cuisine and working-class conversation would cause you embarrassment before your educated acquaintances." The woman I had identified as one of Catherine's charity associates shifted with visible discomfort. "Catherine, surely you did not. He is distorting everything," Cody blustered, though his voice lacked conviction. "This man suffers from serious psychological issues. The pressures of advancing age, monetary difficulties." "Monetary difficulties." I nearly laughed aloud. "Mr. Jenkins, I have been supporting your daughter and son-in-law to the extent of nearly $3,000 monthly for 5 complete years. The only monetary difficulties present here are the ones you are about to experience." I turned to address the assembled table. "These people have extracted $200,000 from me while speaking disparagingly about me in private. They have manipulated my son against me, excluded me from family occasions. And when I ultimately asserted myself, They attempted to demolish my reputation through the newspaper. Michael spoke for the first time with his voice barely exceeding a whisper. Father, I had no knowledge about the newspaper story. Your wife possessed knowledge of it, I replied quietly. And her parents orchestrated the entire thing. They transformed me into a villain for declining to continue serving as their personal financial reservoir and chauffeur service. The social dynamic within the room was shifting like massive tectonic plates. I could perceive it in the guests' expressions, the gradual comprehension that everything they had been informed about this evening's generous hosts was constructed upon falsehoods. This is absolutely unconscionable, declared an elderly woman wearing pearls, while examining the bank statements. Cody, how could you permit your daughter to exploit this man's generosity, then assault him publicly when he ceased enabling it? Cody's meticulously maintained facade was disintegrating. You do not comprehend the complete situation. I comprehend it perfectly, the woman interrupted. This man has been providing financial support to your family, while you treated him like hired domestic help, and when he finally declined, you attempted to destroy his reputation. Catherine's voice emerged, strangled. He abandoned us at the airport terminal. After you informed me that my presence was unwelcome at Christmas dinner because my attendance would be inappropriate for your parents, I responded calmly. After 5 years of paying their obligations, while you looked down upon me for my ethnic heritage and educational background. The silence was overwhelming. 12 individuals staring at Cody and Catherine with expressions ranging from revulsion to embarrassment for having associated with them. Isabella made one final desperate attempt to control the narrative. Everyone, please. This represents a family matter that has simply escalated beyond control. No, I stated firmly. This ceased being a family matter when you made it public. When you employed the newspaper to attack my character. When you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage for your pride. I surveyed the table at faces I did not recognize, but who now understood precisely who I was. I wanted all of you to know the truth before you read about Dennis Flores in the newspaper again, because you will read about me again, but the next time we'll present the authentic story. I closed my briefcase and adjusted my necktie. Enjoy the remainder of your dinner. It represents the final one I will be financing. As I walked toward the exit, I could hear the eruption commencing behind me. Voices raised in accusation, questions demanding explanations, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade collapsing entirely. It represented the most beautiful holiday music I had ever heard. The correspondence arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered via certified mail, with the weight of legal consequences behind every word. I signed for it at my front entrance, noting how the spring atmosphere carried fragrances of fresh growth and possibility, rather than the winter desperation that had characterized those dark December days. Notice of default. The envelope stated, final demand for payment. Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments had caught up with Michael and Isabella like a devastating wave of reality. $8,400 in arrears with 14 days to bring the account current or face foreclosure proceedings on the residence I had helped them purchase. I placed the letter aside and resumed my coffee, reading it the way one would read news about distant weather patterns. Interesting, but no longer my concern. My telephone had been ringing for weeks, with increasingly frantic calls. Isabella's number blocked following the first hysterical voicemail. Cody and Catherine, whose social standing in Spokane had evaporated like morning fog following their Christmas dinner disgrace. Even Michael, whose calls I had been ignoring out of a combination of anger and curiosity about how long it would take him to suppress his pride. The answer, apparently, was 97 days. He arrived at my door that Thursday evening, no longer the self-assured man who had excluded me from Christmas dinner, but someone who appeared to have aged a decade within 3 months. Dark shadows beneath his eyes, his expensive suit creased, the scent of desperation clinging to him like inexpensive cologne. "Father," he said when I opened the entrance, "we need to have a conversation." I stepped aside to permit his entry, observing how he surveyed my home as though perceiving it for the first time. The new furnishings I had acquired with my first mortgage-free paycheck. The fresh paint coating walls that had not been updated in 8 years because every spare dollar had been directed toward his lifestyle. The repairs I had finally been able to afford, now that I was no longer subsidizing someone else's version of the American dream. "Nice place," he remarked quietly. "This is what occurs when you allocate money toward yourself rather than people who do not appreciate it," I replied while settling into my new recliner. Would you like coffee? He shook his head while perching on the edge of my couch as though fearful of becoming too comfortable. Father, I need you to understand how deeply sorry I am about everything.
The Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, the manner in which Isabella and the way we treated you. Continue, I said. I had no knowledge of Cody arranging that story's placement. I swear to you I did not. When I discovered the truth, he ran his hands through his hair. Good Lord, Father, the things they said about you when you were not present, the way they spoke about our family, about Mother's memory. My jaw tightened at the mention of Maria, but I maintained a level voice. And what precisely did they say regarding your mother? That she understood her appropriate place better than you understand yours. That she comprehended boundaries. He could not meet my eyes. I should have defended you. I should have confronted them years ago. Yes, I responded simply. You should have. We sat in silence for an extended moment as the weight of 5 years of mistakes occupied the space between us. Outside, I could hear my neighbor mowing his lawn. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary Thursday evening in an ordinary neighborhood where sons did not exclude their fathers from Christmas dinner. The house is in foreclosure, Michael stated finally. I am aware, I replied. We cannot make the payments without. He paused, apparently recognizing how his words sounded. Without my assistance, I completed for him. Without the money I was sending every month while you permitted your wife's family to treat me like refuse. I understand how this appears, Michael. I leaned forward, ensuring he was looking directly at me. Do you know the amount I sent you over 5 years? He nodded miserably. Isabella calculated the total after Christmas. The mortgage payments, the initial down payment, everything else combined. Over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. I know the precise amount because I finally did something I should have done years earlier. I added it all up. His expression crumbled. Father, I am so deeply sorry. I do not know how to make this right. You cannot make it right, son. That money has vanished. But more significantly, those years have vanished. 5 years, when I could have been building a genuine relationship with you, rather than funding your wife's fantasy existence. I understand that. I understand that now. He looked up at me with something that might have been hope. But perhaps we could begin again. Perhaps there exists some way to. Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments? The hope extinguished in his eyes. We are going to lose everything, Father. The residence, Isabella's respect for me, her parents' approval. I do not know what I will do. You will figure it out, I said not unkindly. The same way I figured out how to exist without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas in solitude while you celebrated with people who believed I was beneath them. He began weeping then, quietly like a man who had exhausted all other options. I lost you, did I not? I chose them over you. And now I have lost you permanently. I observed him for a lengthy moment. This man I had raised and loved and sacrificed for, who had permitted his wife's family to convince him that his father was insufficiently worthy for their company. Michael, I stated finally, you did not lose me. You surrendered me. There exists a distinction. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Is there any possibility, any way you could forgive me? I forgave you months ago, I replied, and meant it sincerely. But forgiveness does not mean returning to previous circumstances. It does not mean pretending this never occurred, or that I am going to resume financing a lifestyle that came with the condition that I be grateful for scraps of your attention. Then what does it mean? I rose and walked to my mantel, where Maria's photograph sat beside a new picture, me with Rosa and her family at Easter dinner, the first holiday I had spent with people who genuinely wanted my presence. It means that if you desire a relationship with me, you will have to construct it from the foundation. It means demonstrating respect rather than demanding I earn it. It means making choices based on what is right rather than what is convenient. I turned back toward him. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, attempts to exclude me from family gatherings, you will remember who actually behaved like family. He nodded slowly, understanding perhaps for the first time that respect was not something one could take for granted. The house, he asked quietly. Is it no longer my concern? I resumed my seat, feeling lighter than I had in years. You are a grown man, Michael. Figure it out as grown men do. Obtain employment that pays sufficiently to cover your obligations, sell the residence, and purchase something you can afford.
Cease living beyond your means and expecting other people to subsidize your decisions. He stood slowly with his shoulders straightened for the first time since his arrival. You are correct about all of it. I am aware. He walked toward the door before turning back. Father, for whatever it may be worth, witnessing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner, I felt proud of you. Embarrassed and angry, but proud as well. Good, I responded. Perhaps there remains hope for you yet. Following his departure, I poured myself a glass of the premium whiskey and stepped onto my rear porch. Spring was arriving in Spokane as the trees began budding and the air warmed with promise. In 4 months, I would turn 63. Maria had been gone for 8 years. I had wasted 5 of those years serving as a doormat for people who did not value sacrifice. I had no intention of wasting any more. My telephone vibrated with a text message from Rosa. Dinner on Sunday. The children want to show you their school projects. I smiled and typed my response. Would not miss it for anything. Genuine family, it turned out, was something you discovered with people who actually wanted your presence. Everything else was merely expensive performance. And I had finished purchasing tickets to shows where I was not welcome on stage. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future appeared precisely as bright as I was willing to make it. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments section. To hear the next story, click on the box appearing on the left side of your screen.